There are moments in life that change everything, not in the way small decisions do, not like choosing a different route to work or switching careers. No, there are moments that rip your world apart in an instant. No warning, no second chances. One moment, you are in control. The next, everything is gone. At first, it doesn't seem real. Your mind searches for logic, for reason, for a way to undo what has already happened. But there is no undoing, no way back. Everything that was certain, the plans, the ambitions, the future you were building, disappears as if it was never there. And you are left standing in the wreckage, trying to understand how everything could change so quickly. You have seen it happen. You have heard the stories. People who had everything, success, wealth, power, only to have it all torn away in an instant. And you tell yourself it won't happen to you. That these are things that happen to other people, in other places. That life will continue as it always has. But what if, one day, it was you? What if, without warning, everything you knew was stripped away? What if the body you relied on, without a second thought, was no longer yours to command? This is not just another story. This is not fiction, not exaggeration, not an inspiring tale crafted to make you feel good for a moment before moving on with your life. This is real. This is proof. Proof of what happens when a person is left with nothing but their mind. What you are about to hear will challenge you. It will make you question what is truly possible. Because this is the story of a man who had it all. A man who built his life with his own two hands. A man who stood at the top, only to lose everything. Not just his money, not just his success, his body, his freedom. One moment, he was unstoppable. The next, he was trapped inside himself. No movement, no voice, not even the ability to breathe on his own. Imagine that. Imagine waking up and realizing that you are a prisoner, not in a cell, not in a cage, but in your own body. Doctors told him it was over, that there was nothing left to be done, that he would never walk again, never speak again, never breathe without a machine, that he had to accept his fate. But what happens when a man refuses to accept the impossible? What happens when a mind, stripped of everything, decides to fight? Because this man did not surrender. He did not accept what the world told him was inevitable. And what happened next defied everything we know about the human body. Stay with me, because once you hear this, you will never look at your own life the same way again. This is the story of Morris E. Goodman. Morris E. Goodman was a man who built his life from the ground up. He was not born into wealth. He was not handed shortcuts. Every step forward was carved out through grit, resilience, and an unshakable belief that success was not given, it was created. He was a man who saw what others couldn't. Where most saw obstacles, he saw opportunities. Where most hesitated, he charged forward. And that vision, that relentless hunger, was enough. By the late 1970s, Morris had turned that vision into reality. He had risen through the ranks of the insurance industry, not as a lucky break, not as a matter of chance, but as a man who refused to settle for mediocrity. He started as a young salesman, hungry and determined, and climbed his way to the top. He wasn't just successful, he was unstoppable. His business thrived, the deals grew bigger, the rewards followed. He had the best cars, sleek, powerful machines that symbolized control. He lived in the finest homes, spaces designed not just for comfort, but for domination. His life wasn't just good, it was the kind of life most people only dream of. Morris wasn't just chasing success, he was defining it, and he had no intention of slowing down. Because when you've built yourself up from nothing, when you've proven to the world that you belong at the top, you don't stop. You don't coast, you push harder, you take on new challenges, you conquer the next frontier. For Morris, that frontier was the sky. The man who wanted more flying wasn't just a hobby. It wasn't just another skill to master. For Morris, it was the ultimate symbol of freedom, of control. He had earned his pilot's license, not because he had to, not because it was necessary, but because it was there. Another challenge, another conquest. And so, on March 10th, 1981, Morris climbed into the cockpit of his Cessna 172, ready for what should have been just another routine flight. A smooth takeoff, the engine humming beneath him, the world stretching out below, growing smaller with every passing second. He felt invincible. He had trained for this. He had prepared. He was in control. But success has a way of making us believe we are untouchable, that the world bends to our will. Morris was about to learn just how fragile that belief could be.
The moment everything changed. Then, it happened. A sputter, a hesitation in the engine's steady hum, a moment of confusion. Then, silence. The engine lost power. Morris was thousands of feet in the air, alone, no warning, no second chances. The aircraft, once a machine of freedom, had become a falling cage. His hands tightened on the controls. Training kicked in. His mind raced, calculating options. He wasn't the kind of man who panicked. He fought to regain control. The rush of wind grew louder. The altitude numbers spun downward. He scanned the horizon. There, an open field. His only shot. Steady it. Keep it level. You can do this. The field was coming up fast. Too fast. But then, a flash. Power lines. Morris barely had time to react before the plane's nose caught them. The force of impact was instant. Metal twisted like paper. Glass exploded into fragments, scattering like deadly rain. The world turned upside down. And then, silence. Absolute silence. No alarms, no rushing wind, no sensation of movement, just stillness. His body was not his own. His world, once so loud, so full, so unstoppable, had gone quiet. And in that silence, the life he had built, the man he had been, the future he had planned, was gone. Waking up in the darkness, Morris Goodman opened his eyes, or at least he thought he did, in a place you will call between life and death. At first there was nothing, no feeling, no movement, no sense of self. Just an endless, weightless void, like floating between worlds, caught somewhere between existence and oblivion. Then, awareness crept in. He was still here, still alive. But something was wrong. Terribly, horrifically wrong. He tried to move his fingers. Nothing. He tried to shift his legs. Nothing. He tried to speak. Nothing. His body did not respond. Panic surged through him, but even that felt distant, muffled, like it belonged to someone else. The simple act of breathing wasn't his own. Something unnatural, something mechanical, forced air into his lungs over and over again in a slow, methodical rhythm. That's when the realization hit. He was on life support. Machines were keeping him alive. He wasn't just injured. He wasn't just recovering. He was trapped. The words no one wants to hear. The voices came next. Low, serious, measured tones. Doctors, nurses, specialists. He couldn't see them, but he could hear them. And what they were saying, he wished he couldn't. Complete spinal cord injury. Extensive fractures. Severe trauma to the neck, the back, the ribs, the jaw. He will never walk again. He will never move again. A lifetime in a hospital bed. No chance of recovery. Each sentence was a hammer blow, driving nails into a coffin that wasn't supposed to be his. The world he once ruled had shrunk down to this room, this bed, this lifeless, unresponsive body. For most people, this would be the end. For most people, hearing those words, spoken by experts, by science, by logic itself, would be enough. Most people would accept their fate. Most people would surrender. But Morris Goodman was not most people. He used the power of the mind. When everything is taken from you, your freedom, your movement, even your ability to breathe, what remains? For Morris Goodman, the answer was clear. His body was broken, shattered beyond repair, according to the doctors. The world had written him off, sealing his fate with cold, clinical certainty. But they had overlooked one thing, one force more powerful than any prognosis, more relentless than any injury: his mind. His body did not belong to him anymore. His arms, his legs, his lungs, once under his command, had betrayed him. But his thoughts were still his own. And in that, he found his weapon. Because if he could think it, he could make it real. The first victory. It started with something so simple, so instinctive, that most people never even consider it: breathing. Machines did it for him, filling his lungs, keeping him alive. Every inhale, every exhale, a reminder of what he had lost. But Morris refused to accept it. He closed his eyes and pictured his lungs working on their own. He imagined the tubes being removed, air flowing freely into his body without the help of a machine. He saw it. He believed it. He made it real in his mind. At first, nothing changed. The beeping of monitors, the rhythmic hiss of the ventilator. But he didn't stop. Every moment, every hour, every day, he focused. He willed his lungs to remember what they had once done effortlessly. And then, it happened. A breath. Shallow at first, then stronger. The sound of air moving, freely. The doctors couldn't explain it. The machines that were supposed to be permanent weren't needed anymore. Morris Goodman could breathe on his own again. The next step. If he could breathe, what else was possible? He had won his first battle, but his war had only begun. His body still refused to move, his limbs dead weight, his fingers unresponsive. But breathing had once seemed impossible too. And now he was breathing. So he made a decision. If he could breathe, then he could talk. And if he could talk, then he could move. His mind became his strongest weapon. He closed his eyes and saw it, his fingers twitching, his hand curling into a fist. He focused every ounce of energy on that single movement. Nothing. Days passed, weeks, still nothing. But he did not stop, because he knew the truth. The moment he gave in to doubt, he would lose. And then, a flicker. A single twitch in his fingers, barely noticeable. A movement so small that most people would have missed it. But Morris didn't miss it. He felt it. He knew. He was coming back. The impossible was no longer impossible. It was just a challenge waiting to be overcome. Defying the impossible. Time passed. Days blurred into weeks. Weeks stretched into months. And still, Morris Goodman fought. The world outside moved on without him. Seasons changed. People lived their lives. But inside that hospital room, inside the prison of his own body, Morris was waging a war, one that no one believed he could win. Doctors monitored him, watching, waiting for the moment he would accept reality. But reality was something Morris refused to accept, because the world had told him he would never breathe on his own. Yet here he was, lungs working without machines. The world had told him he would never move, yet his fingers had twitched, his hands had clenched into fists. And now there was another battle to fight. His arms, his legs, his ability to stand, to walk, to reclaim the life that had been stolen from him. He knew it would take time. He knew the road ahead would be brutal. But he also knew one undeniable truth. If he could think it, he could make it real, step by step. It started the same way as before. He saw it first. In his mind, he was already moving, his hands gripping the sides of the hospital bed, his arms pushing himself up, his legs responding. In reality, nothing. At least, not at first. But he kept going. The small movements came first. A shift in his wrist, a bend in his elbow, then his shoulders, then his arms. He had control again. But that wasn't enough. His legs, once strong, once the foundation of the life he had built, still lay motionless. Doctors had seen cases like this before. Spinal cord injuries this severe, permanent. The man before them would never walk again. Except Morris Goodman was not like anyone they had seen before. The moment that changed everything. The day came. The sound of the heart monitor. Slow, steady, strong. Morris focused. Every nerve in his body was screaming in protest, but his mind refused to back down. And then, a twitch, a flicker in his toes, then a movement in his foot, and then his legs responded. The disbelief in the room was tangible. Doctors, nurses, specialists, people who had built their careers on understanding the human body, stood frozen, watching the impossible unfold before their eyes. Because the man who had been told he would never walk again was now standing. And once he stood, he took a step. One step, then another, and another. The sound of movement, of feet hitting the floor, of a body defying every limitation, echoed through the room. Morris Goodman had done what no one thought possible. And he wasn't done yet. Reclaiming his life. He didn't just walk again, he spoke again, he worked again, he rebuilt everything he had lost, piece by piece, step by step. But this time, it was different, because now he wasn't just a businessman, he was proof of the power of belief, proof of the power of resilience, proof of the power of the mind. And if he could do it, so can you. Because this is what it means to never give up. The end. Your story isn't over yet. If this story moved you, if it sparked even the smallest flicker of belief inside you, don't let it end here. Because someone out there needs to hear this. Someone is on the edge of giving up. Someone is trapped in their own struggle, convinced that the road ahead is impossible. But impossible is just a word. And words don't define reality. You do. So, don't keep this to yourself. Share it. Send it to a friend, a family member, someone who needs to remember that no matter how dark things seem, there is always a way forward. And if you want more stories that will change the way you see life, stories that will push you, challenge you, and remind you of what you're truly capable of, subscribe to this channel. Because this isn't just about one man's journey. This is about you, your struggles, your dreams, your fight, and most importantly, never stop believing in what's possible. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.